All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me now is Dr. Zehoudi Jasser, president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. He's also a retired lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy and author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim patriot's fight to save his faith. Hello, doctor. Good to see you again.
Oh, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me back.
Let me ask you about the choice of Rex Tillerson for Secretary of State. There's a lot of controversy on both sides of the aisle. A number of Republicans have spoken out about the pick as well for various reasons. How do you see it?
Well, I have to tell you first, as an American patriot, and a conservative, I'm optimistic. I think that he hopefully will bring a fresh ideas, if you will, to Foggy Bottom. And you know what's happening at the State Department. It's nice to have somebody from outside the Beltway. Now, having said that, I have significant concerns as an activist who's been trying to work for reform within the Muslim community. The biggest obstacle has been the petro-Islamic countries. Qatar, Saudi Arabia are the main cancer cells. And if you look with that triangulation with Russia, you have the main reason why moderate Islam has not evolved out of the Arab awakening. And the Arab awakening, which we thought would be sort of the opportunity for the removal of these dictatorships toward democratization, has turned into chaos. And Tillerson's coming from a company which is the establishment. It's the global establishment of kleptocrats that basically have stayed in power, thieved the property of their people from Russia to Saudi Arabia to Qatar, and used it to make billions and keep themselves in power. And I don't see any verbiage from Mr. Tillerson that he's against that kleptocracy. His company, his rise really was due to his relationship with Russia. And as my family's dodging bombs and hell, the fury of hell from the air in Syria from Russian bombs, I'm very concerned that his friendship with Putin will simply continue this global establishment rather than the anti-establishment of what we thought Mr. Trump was going to do.
Yeah, former Congressman Tom DeLay said on the show yesterday that we have to make sure, or the Republicans have to make sure in the Congress, that he's more America first and not a globalist first.
Exactly. When we say America first, let's get right what we mean. You know,
you mean we're not a bunch of racists, xenophobes, homophobes, white nationalists, whatever?
And we are that city on a hill. We are that country that will defend the self-determination of nation states for citizens to go through democratization like we did. We are those that our American interests are wedded to our American values. Those aren't two separate things. You know, I was concerned when Mr. Trump said, well, we should have taken the oil in Iraq. I hope that's not Mr. Tillerson's position. I hope it's about democratizing Iraq, stopping it from foreign influence, be it Iran, Russia, or otherwise. So I'm looking forward to, the only speech Tillerson has given about foreign policy, he was against the sanctions against Russia because of their invasion into Ukraine and basically attempt to rebuild the Soviet Union. And I hope that he will change that position, and I hope he's pressed in the hearings to make it clear that sanctions do work, that we don't only bribe bad actors in the world by selling them more oil or telling them we will give them bigger contracts if they don't kill their own citizens, but actually it's interesting to see on the one hand, how will he thread the needle of a Trump campaign that was so against the Iran deal when the main actor that's working with Iran in Syria and in the region, that Iran's using our $150 billion that Obama gave him to buy weapons from Russia and to keep Putin happy economically. It's sort of an interesting quagmire that the hearings, I hope, will bring.
It is interesting, that's for sure. And you mentioned sanctions, and you mentioned Iran, not in the same breath, but of course we know that the sanctions that the Congress had imposed upon Iran back in '96 have now been renewed for 10 more years. I discussed this in the previous segment, but I'd love your take on it. Barack Obama did not sign the bill. He did not veto the bill. He just let it become law by not doing anything, and that's the situation we're in right now. Now, Iran has blasted this. John Kerry has said Iran will suffer no ill effects of this as long as they keep abiding by the treaty that they signed. But I laugh at that. Unfortunately, it's not funny. It's sadly funny, I guess, because they're not abiding by it. But what's your take on the way Obama let this become law, and Kerry's statement that as long as they keep, abiding by the terms of the agreement, they'll be fine?
Well, I think in his last 30 days, Obama is picking his few little battles, and that's one he just sort of let happen. Because what is he doing on the other side? He is pushing Boeing. He's pushing those contracts to take root in Tehran so that they can work with Iran Air. And once that happens, it's going to be very hard, again, for these global economic establishment companies, be it ExxonMobil, Boeing, or whatever, when they start having major contracts in Iran, it's going to be hard for, no matter how hawkish Trump tries to be, to reverse that. And I think that's where he's putting all of his work right now, is to try to make sure that becomes an eventuality before January 20th.
We had a story in the spotlight at the top of the show, and you might not have seen it on CNN or the other fake networks, as I like to call them. They have fake news by omission many times, and this is one of them. This Muslim woman here in New York, 18-year-old college student, claimed shortly after the Trump victory that she was on a subway, and 3 Trump supporters called her a terrorist, tried to take her headscarf off, and everybody on the subway train just stood and did nothing. Turned out she had to admit to the police after inconsistencies in her story that she lied, and now she's under arrest for doing all this, for lying about it. You know, this perpetuation of these, you know, all these hate crimes that have taken place, so many of them are based on the word of the person putting forth the story without any evidence, without any witnesses, that I wonder how many are made up.
Exactly. And really, again, as in any of these individual cases, it's a teaching moment to the pathologies of what we're fighting. Islamism, political Islam, is about separating out the mindset of a community away from being Americans, from being part of this cultural synergy of societal contract, of diversity, of believing in our system of government, and not radicalizing a separate group. And that's what they try to do by lying about these stories. And this girl, you know, it's interesting, there's layers to this. She actually was out drinking with her friends. Her conservative parents would probably have abused her even more than they have in the past. So she lied about this in order to get out of that. So you see that the foreign cultures, the Islamist misogyny, if you will, feeds into radicalizing these girls and boys and others, and then their response is to do what the Council on American Islamic Relations and others want them to do, which is to blame America, to create grievances, to fabricate issues that only radicalizes our community more, rather than dealing with the problems. And the last thing I think is really important for people to understand, this story came out as fake now for a couple of weeks. Where are all the groups saying, oh, we apologize, this is a problem within our community, not to blame Americans? You're going to hear silence, and that's the problem.
Absolutely, and there'll be no call from the outlets that reported this over and over again as an example of how Trump is hateful and divisive in their minds. Yep, absolutely. Doctor, always great to speak to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Anytime. Thanks.